There's a disconnect when it comes to history. A lot of people in America don't know that Caribs, Tainos, and Indians basically are the same group of people. They were the indigenous people that were here before Columbus. And there's a guy from Honduras named Philip Flores. You can look him up on YouTube. He explains the story of the Caribs, how the African immigrants who came to Jamaica weren't indigenous to Jamaica. There already were Taino people there, just like there were Carib people in St. Vincent that spread through Nicaragua and the South America from Belize and other places there. And Philip Flores is an indigenous Garifuna who are the Caribs who are named after the Caribbean Sea. When Columbus got here, he encountered these people and other black people. There are many accounts, but the story keeps getting convoluted because people don't understand that there were black people on the American soil before Columbus came here. And that's counting North America, South America, and Canada, all on the American continent, and the adjacent islands, Jamaica, Puerto Rico, and where all the indigenous people live on these islands were once considered the West Indies, starting from Virginia, going all the way down through the southern states on the coast, ending in Louisiana. So Mississippi, Alabama, South Carolina, North Carolina, and Virginia were all considered the West Indies. Going down to the Gulf of Mexico, going to South America, the whole coast of South America was the West Indies. Now you jump over to all the Caribbean islands were referred to as the Indies. And if you go to Cartagena, Colombia, or parts of Colombia, you see India still on the places. When you go to old maps, it's called Cartagena de India, because it was considered India at one time, and this is lost. This is why people don't understand that New Orleans has a Caribbean type of vibe. But it doesn't mean that the people who came from Africa and who are in Jamaica that speak Patois now are Caribs. They are Africans who mix with Tainos and Caribs and the indigenous people who were already here in the Americas. People don't get that part because it's not taught in history. You have to go to the Library of Congress, read John Carter Brown books, Ralph Aniski, Charles Darwin, Balboa, Sir Godfrey Higgins, and other ancient books that came with the explorers, and not the lies written in the history books. That's why you don't hear about the West Indies, but you always see that word when you're in the Caribbean. And now you heard it from the lady from Louisiana, and it kind of sets you off because you learn history. But once again, the Taino, the Caribs, and the American Indians inhabited all of the places I named, starting from Virginia, going down to Louisiana, the Gulf of Mexico, all the coast of South America, and Brazil. The people were indigenous to the Americas. And the people who came ran and mixed with the people, just like in Florida with the Seminoles and the black African slaves, and the black Seminoles could live amongst each other, just like in Honduras when the Mayans came down fighting the British and all the other wars for that territory from Mexico and the other part of the West Indies. There was a fight, and the people ran down to the parts of South America where the Garifuna live, and the Garifuna and the Maya lived next door to each other. But when slavery started, the Garifuna people, or the African slaves, tried to run and live with the Garifuna people. They couldn't live with the Mayans or the Mongolian people who lived in South America because they didn't share the same identity or skin color. This is why the people could mix and blend in, and that story has been lost. And that's the part where people don't get. When they hear the Caribbean, they think they're talking about the people who came with Africa. No, there were people who were black in Jamaica, Puerto Rico, and all over South America, the Americas, and Canada who were black before Columbus or any explorer touched this land. They all have records and accounts of this, but we get the story mixed up because we forget that there were people here who were indigenous who mixed with the slaves. And the slaves came from Africa. African culture and the indigenous culture of America became intertwined. And that's the part where people don't understand. They share culture, some indigenous and some African culture were intertwined. This is why the story get mixed up, because it's not taught in high school once again, because that's the indoctrination. They lumped us together with recertification. And you could go look up people like Plecker who started this agenda so they can steal the land by writing the indigenous people out and having them look to Africa when they are indigenous to the Americas. There are many records of this account, but you have to dig deep. Like the Library of Congress, John Carter Brown is a good place to start with this. And also traveling, because the oral stories are still there. Just like a guy tried to dispel my story of me being Ouachita, even though the Ouachita names and the names of these indigenous tribes are convoluted, so we can't find ourselves in history. But I know I'm indigenous because my grandmother gave me the oral stories. And the oral stories became stories that were written in textbook and became history. But these people convoluted the stories and wrote themselves in and wrote us out, and even wrote the Mongolians in. If you read Columbus' letters, you can distinguish the lie, because he met the Mongolians first, but they had gold spares, and he was interested in the gold to steal, so he inquired where they got them from. They said the people in the Southwest, who were the indigenous people who were black, copper color, like the definition of the American people that comes from the 1828 dictionary, that they don't want us to read. And read these old books that are in French, Spain, Portugal, and Dutch. And the Mormons and Jesuits have these accounts. They know who the Indians are. There was a total switch and a mind drain and indoctrination on people of color around the world. If you look to Israel, the people were black. If you go to Thailand, the people were black. If you go all over the world, Hawaii, Indonesia, the people were copper colored, but they changed because of race mixing. The people bred with us so they can steal the land, just like they did with the Native Americans. There is nothing new under the sun. Only thing we are is indoctrinated because we went to their schools, so we know what they taught us. Now it's time to break the spell. There's no argument. There were people here that were black who looked like Africans, and there are over 30 accounts, and you can go get different books. And some of the books I will later name so you can find the truth in these books that are older than any history books, because they wanted to change our mindset and make us think a certain way so we won't fight for our own land. Martin Luther King and Malcolm X all spoke of this, and historians who came before Columbus. Do your research and wake up, people. America once was called the West Indies, and the people were referred to as West Indians, just like in Jamaica and the adjacent islands and parts of America. But you'll never hear this. And one place you can find this is the Library of Congress. Do your research and wake up.